Hey everyone, let's wrap up January. January was a really good month. I uploaded quite a lot of videos and I read quite a lot of good books. So let's start with the videos. I had my 14th booktube anniversary and I uploaded a video for that, including some channel goals as well. I also talked about my 2024 reading stats and talked about some goals I set myself for 2025. Then I started on my channel goals and I did weekly check-in vlogs. So the plan is for me, at least for a few weeks, to keep check on my goals, to not lose them out of sight, and do weekend vlogs. I don't think I can manage to vlog the whole week, but to check in on the weekends how I'm doing with my goals, to keep them in sight and share what I'm doing on the weekend and also what I'm reading on the weekend. Mostly I'm not doing much but reading and sorting things around, but that's what's happening now, and there are already 3 of those up. So thank you all for enjoying the content and engaging with what I uploaded. I also uploaded my first sort of review in a while. So let's transition to books and talk about rest. This is an audiobook I listened to all about different forms of rest. And like I said, there's a single review for that where I talk more in detail about it. But this is a book, nonfiction, talking about people in the past, how they worked and how productive they were and how much they worked and how much of their day was spent resting and what kinds of rest they took. So it is looking at a lot of scientists and artists, which is interesting to see how these 2 different areas of work had similar working patterns. And it is recognizable in the data that the author collected that work usually happened in deep work of 4 to 5 hours, and then it was interrupted by long walks or other kinds of rest. And I really enjoyed the book. It was very interesting to listen to with all the facts and the data. It was also interesting to hear of the different kinds of rests that worked for people, and I'm taking away to do more active rests definitely throughout my day, because that seems to be working. And it's nice to just put in a 10-15 minute walk or some form of light exercise to get your brain working again and distract yourself from the focus that you were having. So bonus for me, I liked the book and I uploaded a review. So let's continue to the books that I finished but didn't really make a separate video about, even when I talked about them in the reading vlogs. One of them is just the second in the series of the Husky and his white cat Shizun. And thinking about it now, I almost forgot what it's about. I know that it felt longer and less compelling than the first one, but most of it is probably because one of the main characters was transformed into a child for some reason. If you don't know, this is a series that follows a reincarnation storyline where we have an evil overlord who died and was reincarnated into his teenage self before everything went wrong and he went on this spree of killing and taking over the world and hating everything. And I do enjoy this series. I think there are a little bit too many twists of turns and misunderstandings for my liking, but I am having fun with it. And since it's one of my goals for the reading goals in this year to finish that series, I need to pick up book 3 soon. Next on my list is something to do with paying attention. And I didn't read it next, but it's the way I wrote it down. This is literary fiction and it's been published posthumously. Posthumously, is that the word? And it was part of a novel that is not finished, but this is a finished novella inside that big novel, sort of like. And it feels a little bit like stream of conscious, where the main character, the narrator of the story, is trying to answer a question why he started the job at the IRS and how he got there. And he takes a pretty lengthy way of talking about his childhood, his parents, his past, his education and his attention problems, dealing with drugs or not. He's not dealing with drugs, he's taking drugs and he's experiencing drugs, different drugs, and how that feels on, or how that affects his attention span and the troubles his parents had, the death of his father, things like that. And I did enjoy the story, but I do feel that I'm currently a little bit too stupid to completely comprehend and appreciate it. That also goes for the last thing I read. We're going to put it in here now, which is The Yellow Wallpaper. I read that one before years ago, and it was a reread because it was short and I wanted to finish it. I needed something to finish in January, and I just recently heard someone talk about it again. So I thought, why not pick it up again? And I did. I enjoyed the writing. I really enjoy the story, how it flows, of this young woman who has been confined to her house and mainly the bedroom by her husband after giving birth to her child or their child. And it's a time frame of 3 months, and he always says you need to rest and doesn't listen to what she says. And she kind of loses her mind and gets obsessed with the wallpaper. But also, I enjoy the writing. I see a lot of things in the text, but I think other people see different things in the text than I gathered. So that's the thing I'm currently feeling with literary. Why is every battery empty today? I can't get through the other books. We're taking a break. Okay, where was I? Books. Let's talk about Die Leiden des jungen Werther. I listened to a German classic, and I've listened to it for the first time. I've read the book in school for the first time and hated it, but my teacher said the more she read it, the more she liked it, and I keep trying every now and again to reread it, and I must say she's right. I mostly don't like Werther because he's such a whiny boy falling in love with the wrong person. But the writing in the book becomes more and more beautiful with every time I read it. In this reread, I noticed listening to it that I could grasp things differently because I listen differently than I read. And I noticed how mundane and unchanged his observations of life and people felt, how his situation of falling in love with someone is still annoying me, but how the other person or the other people around him, his friends and family and everything around, just shows how he doesn't fit in with anyone really, how he's too emotional and too sensitive for dealing with the reality and things. And yeah, I did enjoy this reread even more than the last time, so who knows. And I really enjoyed the audio, I must say that. Moving on to something I was a little meh about, and that was the 10th book in the Wayward Children series, Adrift in Currents Clean and Clear. This was following Nadia and showed us her world where she fell through her door and how it was there. And it was okay, but I didn't connect to anything. I didn't care about anything. I didn't find the world that much interesting. It was rather fast. Well, it was 4 hours, I think, the total audiobook. So I finished in more or less one go, and I was not involved. But it fits in with the rest of the series, so it is in the same tone and in the same manner. The next audiobook I picked, though, was a blast. I listened to Watermoon, and if you have seen this advertised anywhere and you have also thought, Ghibli-esque vibes, I'm interested, then you should go for it, because that's what mostly attracted me to it, aside from the beautiful cover. The story follows Hannah and Kay. Hannah is starting her new job as taking over the pawn shop of her father, but on the first day that she's supposed to start the job, the pawn shop is ransacked and her father has gone missing, along with one of the prized things that people pawned. And the door to the outside is wide open. Now, the trouble with the door being open to the outside is that the pawn shop is not in our world. You can reach it through the door that sometimes opens to a ramen shop and sometimes to the pawn shop whenever you need the pawn shop, because you can pawn your regrets there. Some choice that you made in the past that you really regret and that is weighing down your happiness in your present life. So you can pawn it there. And through the door steps Kay, who is a little bit lost in his world, which is our normal world, and sees the door, wanted to get ramen, but ends up finding a bleeding woman there and wants to help. And so they go together on a wild hunt, searching for her father and searching for the lost regret or the pawned choice. it's a songbird actually, because the choices or the regrets turn into songbirds, which are collected by some kind of creature in that parallel world. And yeah, things happen. Too many spoilers. But what I really, really enjoyed about the book was the imagination. It was the world that Hannah's world basically is created and lived and experienced. What I really enjoyed about the book was the fast-paced nature of it, how you stumble from one scene into the next, you go from one little adventure to the next, and you travel through different means or by different means that are fantastical. It really reminds of a Ghibli movie, and it is so imaginative how Hannah's world is set up, how the little things in that world work, how it's created and everything. The writing really brings it about and wrapped me in. I could not stop listening to it. I also really enjoyed the connection or relationship between Hannah and Kay, who find themselves on two sides of a coin. Hannah lives in a world where you don't have a choice. You know your fate and your past from the day you were born. It's tattooed on your skin, actually. Whereas Kay in our human world is rather lost because his mother left him and he doesn't know where he belongs. He left Tokyo to go work, I think in America, and is a physician trying to find answers to questions. So he has constantly questions for everything. He doesn't know if he makes the right choice or the wrong choice. So he kind of envies Hannah for not having to make choices, whereas Hannah is oppressed by knowing what's going to happen in her life. And I really enjoyed the idea or the conversation that turned around choices and having choices or not having choices, regrets, and all those things. I highly recommend this if you have ever wondered about this book, because it's been marketed quite well. I've seen it. I rarely see new releases before they are released, so you must have seen it. And I can recommend it. Highly, highly recommend it. Even the audiobook, because that was a blast. That brings us to the last book I finished, The Small Joys of Real Life, which was a slice of life story of a young woman who became pregnant by a one-night stand. She would have liked to have a relationship with the man, but the man didn't, and then committed suicide a few days after. So the whole book is her fighting for her decision to keep the baby, addressing the dead father in her conversation. So sometimes you read the book and it's addressing a you as the dead father, and sometimes it's just narration. So that is part of the story, and it's also a story of her and her two best friends, of their past, their present, and where things are going, how they stick together and how things evolve. It is interesting to see how she goes through life, how she's not a perfect narrator, how she's not a perfect person, how some things are maybe wrong decisions and her acting towards other people is maybe a little bit off, but it is what it is. It's reality, and I really enjoyed following her story. The book covers chapters from her pregnancy to the birth, and so I don't know, the birth didn't happen, it ended, but we get to know them, and it's basically a slice of life following them through ups and downs of this pregnancy. I enjoyed it. It was nothing special though. Before we go, let's talk about Peripathetic. I forgot the title, I didn't write it down. Anyways, Idea and After book. I read about 2 essays. It's an essay collection, and it sounded interesting, the notes on unbelonging, but the first essay it was interesting, but it didn't go anywhere. The second essay annoyed me about the writing, and it also didn't go anywhere. So I figured maybe this is not for me. I don't know the person who wrote the essay collection, and I've never heard of her. So maybe if I were in her online space and knew who she was, I'd be more interested. But overall, this didn't work for me. But maybe I'm just too old. And that was my January. Like I said, I had a good reading month. I really enjoyed a lot of the books that I read. I enjoyed the time I spent with the books. So I'm looking forward to having more fun reading this year. Now let me know in comments if you've read any of the books I talked about, if you heard of them, if you're interested in them, or what you have read in January. What was your favorite book? Did you DNF something? Let's talk books. Thank you for watching.